Good morning, everyone. So nice to see you all. I'm on campus today. Very happy to be here for the career fair. And let me just share my slides with you before I pass it to my lovely colleague. So welcome to session 1, Emerging Trends Affecting Career Development. As I mentioned, we are live from the career fair, and some of you are online, some of you are in person, so that's lovely. And before we get started, I just want to acknowledge the land that we're on. Feel free to pop in the chat if you're joining us from across Canada or across the world. If you know the traditional lands you're joining us from, feel free to pop that in the chat. And I just want to give a deep gratitude for the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, for allowing us to work, play, live, love on those lands. Thank you, everyone. And here we go. Quick agenda. We're together for 45-ish minutes. So we'll do a panelist presentation, some questions, and of course, networking. And we have our panelists. I don't know, Megan, if you want to talk about them or let them introduce themselves. Over to you.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone. I'm very excited to be here today. And just very quickly, we're joined by our esteemed panelists and employers. We have Island Health. So we have Bernadette here from Island Health. And we have Roya here from FEDEX. So I actually just put the organizational career link in the chat. And then what I'm going to do just briefly is give these two employers the opportunity to introduce themselves. So my name is Megan Hamlet, and I work on the Career Learning and Development team as a job developer. And I'm extremely happy to be privileged to be able to go through these questions with these employers. There will be an opportunity for some chats. I would encourage anyone who is here today to put any questions in the chat. I'm very lucky that Nancy is here to sort of wrangle the chat cat questions in there so we can get a little bit of help so don't worry about that. If you have a question, we may get to it in our session, but I know that these two employers would be happy to connect with some of our viewers today, our students today who are joining. And if they have additional questions we don't get to, don't feel bad, because we will get to those. Okay, so if Roya, you're the first on my screen, so if you'd just like to take just 30 seconds to a minute to introduce yourself, that would be lovely.
Sure. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity one more time. I'm so glad that I'm here with you, with all of you today from FEDEX. And I'm HR Talent Acquisition Partner from FEDEX team, FEDEX Ground, technically, but and FEDEX Express also. So at FEDEX, we do have different kinds of roles and position, from package handler position to non-package handler position, such as coordinator, managers role, and administrative roles. So it depends on our hiring goal. In each month, we have some job posting in our website and Indeed, and you can go through them and just apply online. So at FEDEX, the hiring process is online, and we need you to go through our website or Indeed. I believe I can provide more information in this session. So for now, I believe we're good.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes. And we have some questions, I think, that will really help expand on some of those areas. And I think out of this, we'll find that the students will be able to forge connections and be able to follow up post-event. So that's the key piece there as well. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And next to you, Bernadette, you're next on my list. I'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Megan. Hi, everyone. My name is Bernadette. I'm one of the talent acquisition leads at Island Health. We are one of the biggest employers, I'd say, on Vancouver Island. Specifically, I lead the team that supports all of the corporate services hiring, so all the non-clinical stuff. So I can kind of help out with the registered nurses and the occupational therapists, but my specialty is corporate services. So anything from marketing, IT, finance, HR, everything else under the sun, non-clinical. And I just want to take a moment to recognize I'm calling in from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen speaking peoples today. Thanks for having me, and I can't wait to share what Island Health has to offer.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate that. And I think one of the things that I've noticed with both of your organizations is there's such a vast variety and depth of roles, breadth and depth of roles. So hopefully today we'll be able to shine a light on it really just isn't, warehouse roles, and it really just isn't medical roles or doctor roles, that there's so many supporting. It's really a team of individuals that help your organizations do the great work that they do. So without further, Meganisms, we will head into sort of the first questions. And Nancy, if that's okay, I have them here. And I think what I'll do is I'm actually just going to put all of the questions. Oh, perfect. They're up on the slide there. So I think if that's okay, I'll just ask the first question. You could probably keep it if you'd like, and then come back to the faces in a bit, Nancy, if that's okay with you. So I think let's go the first one. I love this question. So traditionally, when we think of job applications, we think about, okay, let's do a cover letter, we do a resume, and this is what you need to do to showcase your abilities and apply for this job. So when we think about we're in 2024, there's different things that have happened, the labor market has changed. What do you two ladies think are tools that are emerging within those contexts there? And I'll let either one of you just come off mute and sort of explore that if you'd like.
To be honest, from FedEx side, if I want to talk about our roles, for some roles, we don't need any cover letter or resume these days, but for some others, for sure, we need, because technically we receive many applications, so we need to shorten our list, and that's why we need some resume and cover letters. For example, as I mentioned, I'm from FedEx Ground. We do have different kinds of FedEx corporates, such as FedEx Express, FedEx Freight, and they have their own specific process also. But from a FedEx Ground perspective, so we need a resume, not cover letter, but just a resume for non-package handler position for sure. But for package handler position, we do not need any resume, and we contact our candidates, all candidates that they apply.
Okay. Thank you, Roya. Bernadette?
Yeah, very similar for us. It really just depends on the role that you are applying to. Primarily, if the job posting is requesting you to submit a cover letter, the recruiter or the hiring manager will be reviewing that cover letter. So if it's not specifying that you include one, you can assume that just the resume is required. If it is requesting for a cover letter in that particular posting, we will be reviewing those or providing preference to those with a cover letter, just to kind of outline or match kind of what skills we're looking for to your cover letter.
And I think that's really interesting. So we know that there's certain AI tools. I'm going to bleed a little bit into the next question here. We know that like ChatGPT tools are coming out, and AI, and people are using these to at times develop a framework in response, to a role. And so that comprises a number of different pieces. But when we talk about cover letters, what do you think makes a good cover letter for your organization? So either from your personal perspective or what you've heard from hiring managers, what sort of makes somebody stop and take a look in the cover letter process if it's attached to their resume?
Yeah, I can jump in real quick. A key thing for me is, even though I know that there are tools out there such as AI that can support you in writing the cover letter, I still have the job description up in front of me and conversations with the hiring manager in the back of my mind when I am going through a cover letter, and making sure that what's coming out is additional to or complements your resume and still matches what I'm looking for in the job description. So it's really important that if you are using these AI tools, that you are still looking at what the job description is asking of you and tailoring your application to that. Because whilst you're using AI to kind of create that cover letter, a human being is still reading it on the other end. So we do have tools to help us along and like speed up the process, but it is still a human on the other end reading it. So keeping that in mind.
I think so too. And I think that that process of going back and looking what might have been generated and then, comparing it to the listing, but also like, is this me? Like, did this just produce something that if I were to be hired, I'm going to be able to do these things on the first day of work. Like I'm going to be able to like tell that story like that cover letter, right? And I think that that's interesting to think like you said, it can help, but it is a human being at the end of the day that reads it and wanting to make that connection as well. Roya, what does that bring up for you
Yeah,
when you hear that
yeah,
process?
I totally understand. I know some people use this kind of tools these days, but we want to know from you, because when you use this kind of tools, applications, so for sure, maybe it is impressive. At the first glance, it is impressive, but at the end, someone is reading it, and we do have resume, and also at the end, we have the interview with you. So we can find out if it was completely correct or not, and we need cover letter to know more about yourself. In the resume, we can see your job experience, and what I believe, beside that, we know your personal skills also, your personality, your characteristics, because today is different. The labor market is different. We don't just focus on your job experience. We need to know more about your personality, and some factors such as EI are really important these days in the workplace.
Mm-hmm. And what Roya is referring to there is sort of your emotional intelligence and your emotional quotient for the capacity of what would that individual look like on the team with others, as well as potentially identify gaps on the team in that, we always talk about, oh, are you a fit for the organization? I have a lot of hiring managers that sort of talk about hiring for the skills that actually aren't on the team. And I think when you, like I say, hiring for unfit, but it's also about, filling the gaps or understanding where the business is going and knowing that you're going to need some individuals that have different skill sets than are currently within your team, or knowing where your organization is going. And Bernadette and Roya, you both must see this as like knowing where your organization is heading and knowing what kinds of skill sets are needed, whether it is interactions with the public or interactions with patients or in corporate services. That empathy skill set is probably pretty valuable, right? Or those emotional skill sets to tie all the characteristics of your education and your work together.
Yeah, if I could just add, you speak about fit or unfit now.
Unfit, yeah.
Yeah, we use the term value add. So when I'm looking at someone's resume and they're ticking off like the technical skills or the education and the experience that are must-haves, your cover letter is really showing us kind of your value add to the organization. And exactly as you said, we know kind of, or we have an idea at least of what the trajectory of our organization is going to look like and what we're hoping to achieve. So that cover letter is an opportunity for us to kind of really align.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great feedback. And I think, as you both mentioned, because of the status of the labor market, and for those of you joining, I'm like, well, what does that really mean? Meaning that there's been such a change in the labor market in business booming forward post-COVID, and there being less of an attachment of people applying for roles or retention or staying, so that employers are in a hiring phase right now, big time, trying to fill roles, and their organizational needs are changing. So Bernadette, you touched on this piece. There's a question related to, does your organization use AI in the recruitment process? So for those of you joining us today, sometimes that means using like an ATS. We've heard that before. So the resumes are being screened, prior, like whether they meet key components of the job listing. And then there are different tools that different organizations use. So can I briefly touch on that with you too? Like if your organization uses AI, and then maybe some other questions will come out of that.
Yeah, I can jump in. Sorry, Roya. We definitely have an internal applicant tracking system. It doesn't do everything for us, but it definitely helps speed up the process a little bit. So for example, when you're reaching out to me on LinkedIn or any other platforms, and I'm encouraging you to apply on our careers page, the reason behind this is because it does put you into consideration for those job postings, and that then becomes your employer profile if you were to move forward with us. And not to get into all of the nitty gritty, but it does help us with reporting and looking at data and allowing us to use questions, for example, like, do you have X amount of experience in this field? Yes or no. It very simply puts you into a bucket. And if it was a yes that we were looking for, we would be able to review those applicants first. And then secondary to that would be the no category. So it helps. We don't rely on it to do everything though.
Roya, was there a way sort of you've noted that FedEx?
Yeah, it is same. Yeah, it is same at FedEx. To be honest, for resume, if I want to talk specifically for resume, just humans review at FedEx. And we do have some question. We have some text interview, I can call it. And at that time, when they apply for the position, we ask them some question. And if they answer correctly based on their requirements, so for sure after that, we can have their resume and their application, but not 100%. Same as Island Health.
I don't think I'll not, this wasn't one of the questions provided, but don't worry, it's not too scary. It kind of, it follows what we've been talking about a little bit. Would you say that there are good candidates that you have found that potentially are just applying for not the correct role for them, and you found them later in the process? And is there a piece of advice you probably would have liked to have given them earlier in the process that maybe would have helped their application? I'd love to hear about if there's a theme you've seen in seeing different applications and just knowing like, oh, I wish we could have just helped that candidate out a little bit or helped them with their application.
We definitely see this across the organization when it comes to our entry-level roles. Yeah. We find that applicants tend to submit the same generic application to multiple or various different roles where there are specific skill sets that are being asked for. So my one piece of advice in those situations is please tailor your resume. If you're looking for example, food service roles, I'm probably not going to review your resume if it's for an environmental services role and you've kind of just copied and pasted. It really helps when the resumes and the cover letters are specific to the job posting you're applying to.
So it could actually be is it of detriment to them? Like, do you see all the different applications okay, so then coming in, they've created a profile, then they put a resume into multiple applicants, and you're seeing that it's the same resume. So do you sort of think at that point, who are they? Like, where are they a fit?
Yeah, you definitely stand out, but probably not for the right reasons. So your name will pop up and we can see all the applications that you've submitted to all these different roles. For me, it makes sense if you're applying to different roles, but using different resumes or different cover letters, or if you're applying to a particular program and there are different roles in that program that are kind of all similar or aligned. I still would recommend tailoring the resume or the cover letter. So we're understanding what it is you're trying to achieve. Just a piece of advice.
No, I think that's great advice. And I think the concept of more is better and getting out there and trying and submitting, I think can be of detriment, because not only for your self-esteem as a job seeker, because it feels like a lot of rejections then, or your message isn't being heard, but also taking that opportunity to do some assessments, some career management assessment of like, where do I want to go? Like, what are my skills? Where are my value adds, that may not be in the role, and how can I capitalize on that to tell a story in my cover letter and then attach it appropriately? Because how often do you see someone that hits all the criteria on a job description? And Roya, do you often ever see a perfect resume and a perfect cover letter?
Yeah, just I want to advise, as Bernard said, for different roles they need to have a resume. I heard a lot from our job seekers. I said, I'm looking for a job for a while and I couldn't get even one interview. The reason they didn't get it is, I can say, it is their resume, because the only thing we do have from our candidate is their resume and their cover letter. So in the resume, they need to check the job description and duties and responsibilities that they will give them. And based on that, they need to create a new resume for that specific company. Even for the same role, they need to have a specific resume because, for example, for one specific role, such as, I don't know, HR talent acquisition, okay? Maybe FedEx has this opportunity and Island Health has it also, but they cannot upload the same resume for these two companies because what Island Health needs is totally different from the FedEx. So based on the market and based on the duties and responsibilities, they need to create and upload the specific resume.
Mm-hmm. I was doing some work the other day in translating something into French and English. And the translation of cover letter in French is lettre de motivation. And the very quick translation of that is motivation letter. And it really connected with me because cover letter in English, I feel like says, I'm just going to wrap it all up in a bow and like tell them who I am. Letter of motivation to me is, I really want this job. I'm going to tell you about who I am a little bit and why I'm interested so much in this job. And it was like a mental connection for me. I'm like, you lucky French applicants right there, like getting that in the get-go. But like, it's interesting just that mind shift of like, it's your motivation letter. So don't bypass it as an opportunity to showcase that you want this and that it's your opportunity right now to show them that you're motivated and distinguishing yourself. Like Bernadette said, it's not showing up, as the same resume for different roles. And like Roya said, it doesn't seem like it's a type of application for a position across the board, in logistics or package handling, where very clearly that type of role at Island Health is probably quite different than the type of role at FedEx. So that little imparting piece there, I don't know if anyone else found it as fascinating as I did, but
If you don't mind, I want to add one more thing because at FedEx, we have same role in different cities. Maybe they are close to each other, our stations, okay? And the candidate, most of the time, they don't pay attention to the address. So what I recommend is that check the address, please, and see if it is close to your home or not, because depends on the location. Again, we shorten our list. And if you upload the same resume, so we cannot go through it and we cannot move forward.
That's great feedback. I'm going to pivot just slightly. We've talked a little bit about AI, and from a candidate perspective. We talked a little bit about AI from an employer ATS perspective, and sort of what that has meant for you. If we move a little bit into how is your organization and potentially your industry incorporating sustainability into hiring practices or work practices. And the reason I bring this up is a number of our students are coming out of leading programs related to environmental practice and sustainability. Does that change how they're applying? Does it change the kinds of things you need to hear that they value as they are prospective joiners to your organization?
I can jump in. I think I might be misunderstanding the question, but this one would be quite dependent on the programs that you're applying to for us, and what their focus is. So I know all across Island Health and multiple departments that I support when it comes to hiring, some of them have a big, and when you say sustainability, I want to talk about things green. Am I on the right track here? So a lot of the programs have a big focus on waste reduction and recycling. A lot of them have a big focus on community engagement and education. So hearing these things, if you are fresh from school, in your curriculum or in your extracurricular activities, are definitely things that stand out for us. And it's kind of like a check. And we would want to dig into that a little bit deeper.
I think that's a great response, and I know Roya will have something on that as well. And remember too that these hiring managers are yes looking to fill a particular position in the organization, but like Bernadette said, in regards to value add, she sounds like you've got these different hats on for the organization and thinking like, hey, this is a great candidate retention wise. So I know that we've got a big sustainability initiative in this other organization, or like Roya said, like EQ has been really important. And I know on this team, because it's client facing or community facing, the need to have someone who really understands client concerns or logistics and multiple partners. I'm going to think about them potentially see, they're applying for this role, but that could be a fit down here. I know you all think very systems thinking and you got all these pieces running at the same time. But I think from the sustainability piece, I think you're right, just fresh out of school to talk about that if it's one of your values that's going to be really important to your career in various different stages. I don't know, Roya, your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, and just some of the candidates, I think that they have to have a great experience, okay, in that specific role, and they need to work for 1 or 2 companies for 5 years, 10 years, however, it depends on the role they are looking for and they're applying. But I can say that we see your resume as the whole picture of what you know and what you did. So if you participated in one, for example, project in your university or when you were in a school, that will be great and valuable to add it in your resume. And we can consider that one also, because, for example, it is a simple just as an example, it is simple, but I can say we have driver position at FedEx, okay? And some people think that they have to work and have experience from some big companies such as Amazon, UPS, Intelcom, and being a driver, delivery driver for those companies, big companies. But I can say, no, if even you worked as a Uber driver or Skip driver or DoorDash driver, we consider those as your experience. Just we want to see what is your goal for your career life. And based on the all projects and what you did in your life, we check your resume and we mark it.
I love that answer. And it really does come back to that storytelling and understanding that experience can come from a number of different places, and to not sort of identify that experience as needing to come from employer to employee base under a big umbrella of a huge organization or something. It might have been DoorDash, like you said, or when thinking about something like in food services, for Island Health, and it's thinking like, well, no, I've worked in restaurants most of my career, or my first job was a dishwasher, and while I've gone on to do other things, I've always really liked working in the hustle and bustle of a kitchen. And so I think bringing it back to that place where I understand what the role is, and this, I've done it in the past in this way, or I've had this experience in that way, and connecting those dots for the employer. Because I think sometimes applicants perhaps think, oh, well, I've put it on there, the hiring manager must know what that means that I did, or they must know what my duties were. But I would hedge on the bet of going towards, no, explain it, tell the story, and then tell them why your lettre de motivation, tell them why you're motivated to want this particular position. So we've got about 15 minutes left, and I'm going to open it up to questions from the students or comments, and this may bring us down other areas. But what advice would you have for students who are transitioning careers? And whether that is they're transitioning careers from one country to another, they're transitioning type of career, they've done something for a certain amount of time and that's changing for them, or now they've substantiated the work they've done with a master's degree and they want to level up into something else. So what advice would you have from your experience for sort of those students?
Yeah, I really love this question because I feel like I did it. And 2 things really stand out to me is job titles, let go of them, because prime example is talent acquisition. It used to be recruitment, and now both are interchangeable. So really kind of let go of those and look at what the job is actually asking you to do that you're wanting to transition into, and then really think about your transferable skills. So for example, I don't know, like maybe the dishwasher example, like you have not just the technical skill of dishwashing, but you have the people skills and you have the teamwork skills. So if you're thinking about transitioning to another career, perhaps start there and think, well, what other jobs require the teamwork element or the people element, things like that. So those are the two biggest things that when I was transitioning careers, I definitely leaned into.
I love that answer. And I think as much as you can get the capacity to find out more about the role, whether it is from information interviews or whether it is from talking to people who have done that kind of work, I think it really helps you understand, A, is this something I want? And drawing from like, did I enjoy that? You know, was that a part of my previous career or experience that I enjoyed? And then if you do gap, you know, in that particular experience in having that exact job or skill from the past, you can talk to it. And exactly like you said, you know, I have been in, you know, this kind of environment for a while, and I miss the busyness of a kitchen. You know, I miss everybody relying in quick contact and funny comments, and that's the way of kitchen life or warehouse life, of packages moving really quickly. I've realized I'm not one for working independently by myself. And I think when you start to know that story, like you said with your career, that's what you really leaned into, was knowing what you wanted, knowing what was important to you. And I think that probably played a pretty big role in you being able to scaffold those different experiences into transitioning into a new career. For you, Roya, what does that bring up when we hear, like, what advice do you have for students transitioning careers?
Yeah, just what I want to say is that, as I mentioned before, job market has been changed. So historically, if you back to HR perspective, you can see that most of the HR people were looking for people who have the technical factors in their resume. But today, we don't just consider those factors, because we are looking for some other elements, as I mentioned, their personality, their characteristic. We need people who can work with team, okay? Who need people with different kinds of personality that we need for our team. So don't worry about the technical factors, because we train you. All companies, I can say, or most of the companies, they train their employees. At FedEx, we do have different kinds of internal programs for our employees. For example, maybe they start from package handler position. They don't have any knowledge about administrative roles or management roles, but we have an internal program for them, and they can have a mentor. And we have a connection with one university. They can get a certificate or degree from there, and they will be prepared for their upcoming role. So no worries about this kind of elements. Just see who you are, what you can do, and how you can be practical and for the organization, and introduce yourself with your resume and say, I have this skill, and that's why I am sure I'll be good for your company. Maybe you've worked in different position previously, but try to connect that role with this new role and find out what you can do for your new employer. And don't worry about the technical parts. For sure, you will be trained.
I think that's really, really great advice. So for those of you who have come on or may have questions, we would love to hear from you, like Nancy mentioned, either in the chat or either by coming off of mute. And we'd really just like to hear some comments about any kinds of the questions that were asked today, or any questions to Bernadette at Island Health or Roya at FedEx. Otherwise, save these wonderful employers from having to hear more questions from me, because that's what they're gonna get if you don't step in.
while you guys are typing up your lovely questions, I just want to add one last thing is when you're thinking about transitioning careers, lean into your network or build your network, reach out to the people who have those jobs that you are wanting to transition into and ask them for 5 minutes maybe to share their journey with you. Most people are nice enough to respond. Most recruiters are nice enough to respond. So yeah, your network is valuable.
It's true. I heard, the saying is your network is your net worth. I think I heard a while back, but it is really true. And very much aligned with both of you had said. It's like it really isn't about exactly what you say or what you do. It's really about how you make people feel. And sometimes you make people feel that you're just a human being with different skill sets. You're trying very hard and you're trying to tell your story, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And I've never seen a candidate apply for a role that hits every criteria ever. Like these are speculations as to the types of duties and responsibilities that could and are likely contained within the job description. And I think that's the best way to put it. These employers also want to hire you. They don't want to interview a million times over and over. They're not sitting there trying for a negative outcome. They actually want you to be the successful applicant of that process. And Bernadette smiled there because I think that probably rang true for you for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Every time I sit in on an interview, I think, I hope this is the one. So we're absolutely on the same side of the table there.
Yeah, and I think from a safety capacity, it's like, or self-esteem, you're going in and not thinking like, oh, I have to impress them. Go in thinking they really want to hire me, because they want to find the right fit for their team. They want to find that value add. By the way, Bernadette, I'm going to use that for the rest of my career services life. I love that saying, but they want to find the value add, knowing, like Roya said, we know all the positions or where the company's going. So there does seem to be a question in the chat there. I think it's a great comment from Joy. And she said, I'm so happy to hear that AI is being used, but you're still reading the cover letters and resumes. And that she comes from a generation that you hit the pavement. I love that saying, by the way, but hit the pavement for a job. I don't know if you ladies had any comments about that comment there. I think it's very true, though. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Nothing from me apart from, yes, we're absolutely still on the other end reading those cover letters. I will say I'm capturing or a very engaging intro will allow me to continue reading your cover letter. I will be the first to admit that if I'm not intrigued, like halfway through, I'm probably not going to read the entire thing. So make sure it's engaging from the get-go. If you address it to me, or if you know the recruiter or the hiring manager personally, bonus 10 points, because I love seeing hi Bernadette or hi hiring manager rather than seeing hi team.
Do you find that given the sort of access to digital tools, such as LinkedIn, and that is an AI tool in itself, that algorithm, on LinkedIn, like, hey, if you know this person, might know this person, or I see you applying for this job, maybe you should check out this job. Do you find you get applicants that message you on LinkedIn? And would you say that that's an effective place to make a foothold into your organization?
Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So candidates are always reaching out. Use it smartly, intelligently. Is that the word? Really, if you're going to be looking for a job if you haven't done your research, I probably won't be applying. So for example, a bad outreach would be, hi Bernadette, I'm looking for a job. That gives me no context. If you take the time to maybe research on our careers page what jobs you're interested in, I could probably forward you to the right recruiter or the right hiring manager. And if you've got your resume attached to even your outreach, even better for me, because I can already share that with the hiring manager.
Yeah, and I love this because, it's a great opportunity to have a chit chat with your potential candidate, and we can get a view and have a quick conversation with them. And then I ask them to apply online because our hiring process is online. But many candidates reach me always, and it is great. I love it.
I think that's fantastic feedback. I'm just going to go ahead and put the career sites in the chat for both FedEx and for Island Health. I know I have both of your email addresses. I don't know if that's a way that you want anyone that's seeing the I was gonna say the show today. Do we feel like it was a show? I feel the session today. If they'd like to connect with you directly. But I just wanted to sort of just say if there's a way that you feel that they can reach out, if you want to go ahead and put that in the chat, or let Nancy and I know, and we can go ahead and put that in there as well.
I'm going to put the
sure.
talent acquisition inbox in the chat. If you have specific questions to specific job postings, absolutely reach out to me. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to respond to a general "I need a job" email.
Fair, fair. It looks like Alejandra has a question. I hope it's not a hard one. No, I'm teasing. Alejandra, I work on the same team as Alejandra, so I'm.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I've just been enjoying listening to both of you, Roya and Bernadette. Thank you. I hope my camera is on now. Sorry, I have it in two different screens, so I apologize. I just seen that the students are still, waiting, and maybe they're processing everything you're doing. One of maybe common things that we have students say when you invite them to connect for information meetings is like, I'm sending those messages, but I'm not getting response. People are not saying yes to my ask. So I'm just wondering, what would you say? What would be the type of message you receive that you would say, yeah, let's connect for a coffee? Could you give just some suggestions on that approach? I know you said already not the job, don't ask for a job, but I would love if you could just maybe give an additional, what would resonate for you if you want.
I can jump in. I think the more specific you are in what in your research, the more likely I am to respond, or the team is likely to respond. So for example, if it is a marketing role, I want to see what value add you can have to the team. And again, in that first couple of sentences, that intro, get me engaged, and I'll be more likely to respond. If you can highlight for me what you can add to the team in the first kind of paragraph, I'll be more likely to forward your resume on to somebody that could probably help you out.
I love that answer. I realize I'm not one of the panelists as well, but I think it's so true when you're going to message somebody on LinkedIn or reach out, that it isn't a one and done and I want this job, can you get this job for me? And I think sometimes that's where applicants might see a negative response, is because they're very focused on this one thing. They found this one person they think is the decision maker, and they want to know if they can have a yes decision right there. Whereas I think what you're saying, Bernadette, is use that as an opportunity for relationship building and to do your research, but to ask questions on the research that you've done, and to say, I've seen this role, but I got it, and even if you're honest, I got to admit, I feel a little bit like not implying, because I'm wondering if I have all the skills. This is what I've come up with, and this is a copy of my resume. Would you think that, is there something am I missing something? Or am I not talking about my value add? I feel like Bernadette would be like, oh, you're a human and you told me about your human experience in this, and I want to know a little bit more about why you don't feel like you can apply. And she would probably start to look at your resume right there, I'm guessing, right? It's just approaching another human as another human, rather than, hey, can you do this for me, you person who makes decision time person lady, right? I mean, that's kind of the sense I get, right? Is let's make this about relationships and asking questions and having some reciprocity about sharing who you are and finding out in addition to the research you've done.
Yeah, and I think Roya would agree with me. FEDEX is so large, Island Health is so large. We are not the only recruiters on the team or talent acquisition partners on the team. So we look at maybe 10% of the competitions, perhaps. So we would need to work in redirecting your applications to where they need to go to get you in front of the right people.
Exactly. And we have different locations. So based on the location, based on the role, some other folks work on it. So we need to pass it. At first, when I receive the request for a specific role, for sure, I try to explain it for them, check their resume, and then I need to pass it to my folk because it is their area. I cannot make a decision for them. I can provide some general information, but I cannot say yes or no.
Okay, I am going to say that we can stop recording because I feel like it's been an awesome experience. I don't want to jinx it by saying anything that shouldn't be on recording. No, I'm teasing. I want to thank Bernadette and Roya for this opportunity of coming and sharing their knowledge. I feel like it was incredibly fruitful, interesting, dynamic. I learned a lot just from listening to you, your answers, and I think that there was such a nice complementary sameness to your responses, which I think is validating on, hey, this is what employers are thinking out there. So thank you so much. I know you're busy in your role, so taking this time to come on, and we wrangled you in and you were here and you did this. So thank you from the bottom of our career learning and development heart for what you were able to provide to our students today, because I think it was incredibly valuable.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.